All right, please be seated. Good morning. I am giving Brother John a break today. I think he's going to get ready for Halloween for trick-or-treating tonight, so he needed to kind of rest up today. So happy Halloween to you, and I am known within our bank and in the Tulsa community for having bad jokes. So I thought what I would do this morning is, I don't want to disappoint anybody, particularly online, so I want to bring with you my 5 favorite Halloween jokes. Okay, you guys ready? Kennedy, I'm going to make you proud. How do you fix a broken pumpkin? With a pumpkin patch. Pumpkin patch, Nate, you get it? What do you call 2 witches living together in an apartment? I knew that had a lot of potential for a side comment. They are broom mates. Broom mates, not roommates. Broom mates, Sam. What do you call the best dancer at the Halloween party? Boogeyman. The boogeyman. Give it up. Give it up. What song do vampires hate the most? Got it? You are my sunshine. You are my, they hate the sunshine. They hate the sunshine. And why didn't the ghost dance at the Halloween party?
He had no body to dance with.
Unbelievable. He had no body to dance with. No body. Man alive. Next time I'm going to make sure Ann Renee's not here whenever I'm doing my Halloween jokes. You're taking all my punchlines, girl.
Everyone knows a lot of those jokes.
Well, not everybody. Not everybody.
They do now.
Okay, so I want to tell you a story about a guy in 2014 in London, Ontario. There was a young man by the name of Josh Yant, Y-A-N-D-T. His father had passed away. He was a teenager, went to a rural school there in Canada, and he was bullied severely. And he was beat up. People took his lunch money, made fun of him. And the last straw was when some kids from his high school tore up the pictures of his father that he had in his locker. It was so sad. So he and his mom decided to transfer him to another school. So he moved to a city school there in Canada called Clark Road Elementary School. And he said that the morning that he was getting ready to go to school at this new school, he was so nervous, and he thought, man, I hope it's not even worse, here. Please let the kids be nice to me. Please let me find my place. And he said he was saying a prayer, and he got this idea that he would open the door for every student that came into the school, both every morning when they came in, and then every night whenever they would leave school. And so he did. So here's this kid that nobody knows opening the door for them as they walk in. And initially, the kids made a lot of fun of him, called him the doorman and that type of thing. But over time, they said they began to kind of look forward to it. It was kind of a treat. And so they began to get to know him as a person. He became super popular at the school, was named the prom king, was voted in prom king, and is now a very successful motivational speaker, going all over to talk to schools about not bullying, being yourself, putting yourself out there, because opening the door was about a lot more than just that physical opening of the door. He wanted people to get to know him as a person, okay? I want to share this that was just shared by a buddy of mine on LinkedIn. I just read it last night. On my flight from Tokyo to LA several years ago, I saw several people in dark suits as we waited to board. They all boarded first after a brief delay, and I wondered who they were and what was going on. It turned out they were Secret Service agents and that President Jimmy Carter was on the flight. He was returning from a Habitat for Humanity event. Once we were in the air and the fasten seatbelt went off, he proceeded to walk the length of the 747 down both aisles and shook every single passenger's hand. He had a kind and gentle word for everyone. He was in his mid-80s at the time. As I sat there, I realized that he could have easily stayed in his seat and had no reason to do what he did other than simple human kindness. Democrat, Republican, Independent, to Jimmy Carter, we were all human beings. I couldn't help but feel that he felt honored to meet us. Humility and kindness are a remarkable combination we could use today more than ever. This is uncommon kindness. So today I want to talk about the concept of being kind in a world that isn't always so kind, right? And what got me thinking about this is I entertained a group of bank CEOs. I'm in the banking business, and I'm in a CEO roundtable group, and there are 7 of us that are all throughout the central U.S. So we're in Chicago and Houston and St. Louis and all over. And every 6 months, we go around to each other's communities, and we meet and look at numbers and make fun of each other and say how much better we are than the other one. But the result is we get better and better over time. Well, I hosted them in Oklahoma City this past week. And for the first 2 days, really they're 2.5 days. And for the first 2 days that we were there, I have always thought of Oklahoma as being an extremely friendly place, compared to others. And the experience that we had was awful. I mean, awful. It was like everywhere we would go, the service, it was like, they were angry to serve you. One of the guys was in a convenience store, and a fight broke out in the convenience store over somebody telling somebody they needed to go get a job, and you got in this big fight over whether or not you ought to work or not. And I'm like, oh my gosh, until the last day, Friday morning, we were at IHOP. We had to grab a super early breakfast, and there's not much that's open that early. So on Classen, near I-44 in Classen, there's this IHOP that, it's kind of down on it's like at a dead end. There's very few street lights around. It's a little scary. And so we pull in. When you get there, you can see that most of the people that are eating there or having a tough go. We bought several folks breakfast while we were there, but we had this waitress that was magical. She was magical. Her name was Pam. She had worked all night. She basically had the 24-hour, so she had worked the night shift. I know she was tired. I know she was ready to go home. I saw her dealing with challenging customer after challenging customer, and the way she dealt with us was uncommon. She was precious. She wanted to know about us and had this conversation with us. And when you left there, you just felt so much better than whenever you came in. And so I thought, in this world, probably the thing that we all need to give and to get is uncommon kindness, a level of kindness that goes beyond the differences that we have, no matter what you feel, vaccine or no vaccine, mask or no mask, wall or no wall. We can find all kinds of reasons that we ought to split into 2 sides here based upon how we feel. But what would be better is if we focus on sharing the love of Jesus Christ, no matter what. Jesus did this a lot, okay? And I want to share some examples with you today. In Matthew 8, 1-4, it says, when Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. Immediately he was cleaned of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, see that you don't tell anyone. And when you study this, I wonder why he didn't want him to tell anyone. And when you study it, it really was because he was afraid that riots were going to break out. That people thought that Jesus was there to take over the Roman government. That's not why he was there at all. He was there to die for our sins. And so he didn't want the fights and the battle. That actually deterred his plan. But he said, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them. So again, as another quick aside, I studied this and I'm like, I wonder what the gift was that Moses commanded. I wonder what he was talking about. It's 2 live clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop, which is an herb used for cleansing the plague and leprosy. This is a rule that they had back in this day. Because of the contagiousness of their disease, and you can relate to this today, okay? Because of the contagiousness of their disease, lepers were considered outcasts, as you can imagine. I mean, nobody wanted to be around them. Everybody shunned them. They lived separately. They were seen as unclean and untouchable. But Jesus, when he took pity on this leper, healed him of the disease. And he didn't see him as a leper, but as a human being who was sick and who needed help. He didn't look at the differences or the disease. He focused on what he could do. And he teaches us that kindness can go way beyond stereotypes. That kindness can be to everybody. In the words of Mother Teresa, if you judge people, you have no time to love them. And so we want to focus more on love. In Luke 19, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. I'm sure many of us are familiar with this story. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." Now again, in Jesus' day, tax collectors were the worst. They were known for bribery. They were known for taking too much and sticking it in their pocket. Overall, they were just generally, they would be like the IRS today. I mean, back then they were just unpopular. I mean, nobody liked taxes, so nobody liked the tax collector. Yet Jesus didn't even hesitate to go dine with him. It didn't matter to him what other people thought of you. It didn't matter to him what your social standing was or was not. He loved the person. Preaching to the Gentiles. In John 4, now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. You know what's going to happen next. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You're a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" All kinds of social norms being broken here in this deal. I mean, tons. A man asking a woman for a drink. Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" And Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." So we know that in our country there are differing views of foreign citizens, okay? And back then it was no different. Xenophobia went wild back in Jesus' day as well. The Samaritan woman was a foreigner, and in the eyes of a Jew, she was a Gentile, and those races did not associate. It was even frowned upon to talk to someone of that race. So by preaching to the Samaritan woman, he broke societal boundaries and showed us that kindness can be universal. And so the question is, how do we look at people who look different than we do? How do we look at people who are from a different place than we are? Do we treat them with love, or do we judge them because of where they are from? And then finally, in Luke 22, verse 47, while he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" And one of them, who was Peter, struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, "No more of this," and he touched the man's ear and healed him. Now, this one deals with forgiveness, okay? And this one is probably the hardest of the four. When he is about to die, Jesus knows that he is about to die. I mean, he's on the verge of crucifixion. He knows how brutal it's about to be. He knows these guys are taking him there. And he healed the man's ear. It's really remarkable. Even while hanging on the cross, he still managed to ask his Father to spare the people who've hurt him, because he said, "They don't know what they're doing. Please forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." But when we are wronged, and me too, I'm in this boat too, when we are wronged, what do? You want to lash out. You want to hurt that person back. You want to say something worse about them than they said about you. That's not what Jesus did. He was uncommon kindness. My life was really changed by a man with uncommon kindness. And I think I've shared this story, so I'll give you the very brief version. But I didn't know what I was going to do my last semester at Oklahoma State. And I'd been invited to this Board of Regents dinner with our university president. And at the dinner, he asked me what I was going to do, and I was too embarrassed to say that I didn't know. And so I looked down, and this guy next to me had a nameplate that said he was a banker. And so I thought, that sounds good. And so I said, "I think I'm going into banking." And they all asked me questions. I bluffed my way through the conversation. And we get to the other side of dinner, and we're walking out the door. And this gentleman says, "Hey, Sean, I didn't realize that you were going into banking. I have a friend that owns a group of banks in Oklahoma City. Maybe I can help you get an internship." Okay? I am desperate. I go change my resume. I run it back over to him. That is how I end up in the banking business. And not only did the university president take the time to invest and help a farm boy from Beggs, Oklahoma, get this internship, he also called toward the end of the summer to check on me, see how things were going, which led to a lunch with the chairman and them ultimately hiring me to keep me there. There wasn't anything that I could do for him. I mean, nothing. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any political power. But he chose to practice uncommon kindness and help someone that could not help him, and it really changed my entire life. It changed the whole trajectory of my life. I want to read a text to you that I got, I think it was early this week. I have really no concept of time. But I want to give you a little background. And I hope he's listening today. He often joins us online. So my friend Richard, back in 2018, we were in the Journey group together, our discipleship group. And he was struggling. He was really having a tough go. And one day he said he felt God call him to come in and meet with me. And he came into the office, and we sat down, and he started laying out these challenges, which were financial in nature, which is what I do. That's pretty normal. People go to a doctor when they're sick. They come see me when they're having money problems. So Richard sits down, and we go through all, kind of what he's got. And I remember we pray together. It was a very emotional meeting, and we kind of come up with a plan of what we think he can do to kind of work his way out of this situation. And here's what he sent a few days ago. "Good morning. I am humbled and very grateful this morning, and I wanted you guys to praise our Lord with me. Leanne and I are paying the final credit card this morning in the amount of $7,200. I went back and looked, and in 2018, we had $62,000 in debt and making payments of $1,700 a month. I can only praise our God and thank you for the encouragement, love, patience, friendship, and influence on my life. I am truly thankful for you, and I am praising the Lord. Now, there isn't a time management book in the world that says if you're a CEO of $1 billion bank, you stop and spend an hour with an individual who isn't even your customer working through a financial challenge. That's not in any, I've been to every time management class known to mankind. I've written some books on the subject, and none of them would say to do that. But here's what I know. That's what God called us to do. That's what he called me to do. And I know that this individual is going to impact many, many generations because of what he has overcome. It's going to impact his kids and his grandkids and go many, many generations forward. So kindness is not always convenient. It doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable. You know, a lot of times it's going to be stretching. It might be somebody that needs our kindness that we don't really want to be kind to. It may be someone that we don't really have time to deal with. We have a busy day, and this is an interruption within our day, but God has placed them there. I have learned this. There isn't a whole lot that I know, but I know for a fact that when we have a divine interruption, we got to stop. We got to stop and do that, and not whatever it is that's on our very lengthy and growing, in my case, to-do list. So let me give you one last story, which is just wild. I shared this with Kennedy and Angela last night, and this one absolutely blows my mind. So last Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, we have our board meeting. And we had our executive committee in the morning, which is where we kind of talk about the private, sensitive stuff. And then we had a break. And then we had our actual full board meeting that afternoon. Well, during the break, a friend of mine, and I talk about him a lot, but his name is David Edens. He actually lives here in town. Precious, precious guy. He kept telling me, you've got to go with me to see this warehouse. You have to come with me. You got to meet this guy. I don't know why, but I know that we need to go see him. So again, I've learned that's what God is saying. That's what we're going to do. Wasn't an ideal day for me. I really needed to prepare for the board meeting. But if that's what God has in store, that's what we need to do. So we go out to East Tulsa, kind of near the Hard Rock Casino, and we pull up to this very nondescript warehouse, really no sign on it whatsoever. I'm not even really sure that I'm at the right place, but I'm wandering around, and I see Dave, and I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm here. So we go inside. He introduces me to a gentleman named Terry Henshaw, okay? And I want to tell you about this, what the Lord did. Terry used to be the crusade minister for Billy Joe Doherty at Victory Church here in Tulsa. When Billy Joe passed away, he ended up moving into disaster recovery efforts, and he began gaining a lot of contacts with people who were in really, really big corporations, like an Amazon or a Costco or Pottery Barn or whatever. And then over time, and he still doesn't know why this happened. I mean, he knows why, but it's illogical. People just began to call him from these companies and say, hey, we know you are in the ministry, you're in a nonprofit, you deal with needy people. We have extra stuff. So they might have returns, or they might have closeout items at the end, or things that maybe there's a small defect. Maybe there's not really a defect at all. Maybe somebody actually took whatever it was, used it for 2 or 3 days, brought it back and said there was a defect because they didn't want to pay it for it and just wanted to use it for 2 days, whatever the case may be. So they would just send him stuff, brand new. I mean, and I'm talking about Tempur-Pedic mattresses, Sony televisions, these awesome power washer deals. I mean, brand new furniture. I mean, Pottery Barn, nice furniture, okay? So he has amassed all of this in a warehouse, and he's decided, okay, what I think the Lord wants me to do is host a big event here in Tulsa for all of the, I'll go out to all the charities that deal with people that are struggling and let them come in and get whatever they want. They can literally come into this warehouse and just grab, and I mean, it's like Santa's, toy shelf there. And so this was going to be that, so they'd publicized this widely. This was going to occur on a Saturday, okay? And the stuff was in the warehouse of a local charity. The head of the local charity comes to him and says, "Hey Terry, I cannot apologize enough, but I was mistaken on my timing, and we have a huge shipment of stuff coming in for us. You got to get your stuff out of the warehouse by tomorrow." So he is going, what in the world am I going to do? And so he starts praying, God, I know I'm supposed to have this big event, and I don't know anybody with the warehouse. What am I going to do? So that day, there are people, and you can imagine with this huge, it's just like roomfuls of stuff that they bring in, and it's all kinds of, so somebody's got to go through and sort it out, catalog it, inventory it, all of that jazz. So he had this couple that was there volunteering to help them kind of inventory through this stuff. And he noticed that the couple was crying the whole day. Okay, as they were sorting, and he would look over and they would just be crying. And he couldn't understand why. And at the end of the day, he approached them and said, guys, I don't want to be rude, but he said, is everything okay? Is there anything we can pray for you about? Is something wrong? And they said, well, we feel like we're supposed to sow into God's ministry. They said, we have a company that we've had for 40 years, but the last 18 months has been awful. We have had no new orders. We've had to lay off 80% of our staff. We can't even make payroll for the ones that are remaining. And we want to help you in this ministry so bad, but we don't know how, because we don't have any money. And they said, is there anything that you need other than money? And of course he says, I need a warehouse real bad. I could actually use 2 warehouses. And they said, we have that. We have, because we have no business, we have very, very large empty warehouses. We would love for you to use the warehouse, okay? So they get a bunch of people together. They move the stuff. They work all night. They move the stuff over to the warehouse. And Terry says, can I pay you rent for this space? It's very, very valuable to me. And all the executives that are still left at the company are saying to Gary, the owner of this struggling company, we need to take the rent. We can't even make payroll. This would allow us, to at least make one more payroll. Yes, take the rent. And he said, no, God is telling me that I'm supposed to sow this in, that I am not supposed to take any rent at all. They were furious. His executives were furious. The next day, Gary gets an order in his company for $700,000, okay? The next day, I'm going to cry, I can't even tell the story. The next day, he gets an order for $2 million. The next day, he gets an order for $5 million. So he comes to Terry and says, please don't leave my warehouse. Please stay. Please stay here forever. In fact, if you will stay here and keep your ministry here, he said, I will pay for all of your, it chokes me up. He said, I will pay for all of your staff. I will pay for all of the costs of your ministry. So today, in this place, they have 30 employees doing the work of bringing in, Guys, it's as far as you can see. I mean, I can't give the location because they don't want people coming there and, stealing it or whatever. But here's what they do. This ministry works with 187 and soon to be Little Black Dress. They work with 187 ministries all over this region, Oklahoma and surrounding states. You never hear about them. You've never heard of them. I'm not even going to tell you the name of the ministry. What they do is, now I'll give you an example. Remember when we had all the floods, when Sand Springs was totally flooded? I remember hearing about a very small church out there that gave like 1,000 bikes to kids in the community because all their bikes, got flooded and rusted out. And I remember thinking, how would it be possible for a little bitty church, to do that? It kind of reminds you of the stuff we do. You look at it. It was this ministry. They have given millions and millions and millions of dollars into this area with no credit. They don't want any credit. They don't want anybody to know. They just want to further the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's their one requirement. If you give something, they need to know about Jesus. And so I can't even imagine the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands that have been impacted. That is uncommon kindness. When this couple comes to help them in their warehouse, when they're at their toughest, lowest moment, and gives them the space, that's when God goes to work. That's when he goes to work. So the message I will leave, and I'll close this here in prayer, but the message I will leave with us is it may not be normal. I mean, what we are being called to do, the person that we are being called to show love to, it may not feel normal. It may not be right. It may be somebody that we don't even like. It may be somebody that we don't agree with. It may be somebody, heaven forbid, in a different political party. It may be an OU fan. For me, it could even be an OU fan. I mean, but we have to not let these boundaries keep God's love out of our lives. Today, more than ever, we need uncommon kindness. So please bow with me today. Dear Heavenly Father, as we move into kind of the prayer time,